All right, welcome back to DTR's YouTube channel. Since the last installment of this 69 Caprice project, a lot has gotten done. The hood and the deck lid I stripped down to bare metal. I then re-epoxied and re-primed those panels. They are sitting over there against the wall, but they also got prepped and the insides of those panels got painted accordingly. The deck lid got the blue color and the hood got the satin black, and that is already knocked out and out of the way, but those panels still have to be blocked, possibly body work get done, and then re-primed to the phase that these panels are in now. The doors as well, they were sent out and sandblasted. The doors and the fenders, the rear valance and the front valance, those got blasted, and those are already painted and finished and basically waiting to be installed when the time is right. Yesterday I started back on this project, getting let's go back to the doors and the fenders. The doors and the fenders were sandblasted. I then epoxied them, primered them, blocked them all out, and did necessary body filler work, which is also featured in another video about basics of body work and doing body filler work, that you can watch and see some of those steps. But in a nutshell, these were epoxied. They were then hit with sanding primer. I like to put sanding primer down, and again, you might have heard in other videos, but I like to put sanding primer down to sand that as my base for doing plastic work. The sanding primer gives you a little bit of build to start with. Plus, when you start, blocking out a panel or prepping a panel to see what necessary plastic work you have to do, it just gives you a little bit more material to work with than just a single layer of epoxy. You end up sanding too much of the epoxy off, and it kind of defeats the purpose. So the plastic work got done. I then re-primed these panels after the plastic work was done, and after I primed them, because it was rough body work, I usually will re-block the primer with like a 120 grit, and then to get rid of the heavy scratches from the heavy body work, and did that, 120'd everything, and ended up with still a lot of plastic work showing through and so on. So I then re-primed the doors with 3 more coats of primer. Again, I've mentioned in the other videos, a nice wet, reduced or thinned out layers of primer that flow out nice, that fill your scratches, that fill your pinholes, and make the overall job turn out much nicer. And that's where they're at now. When I primed them, there are some little tidbits here and there that I'll have to tune up with a little bit of glaze, little touch-up spots. But overall, these things are are sharp. We got nice body lines going on. These panels were pretty wavy and took a little bit of work. But obviously the next thing that I did here was I realigned everything. Got my gaps looking really good. Again, as I've said in other videos in the past on this kind of thing, you want to start with getting your door and the front of your rocker lined up. That's kind of like a starting point with lining up panels for your door being front and back. So that gave me, the door's slightly back to the rocker, but it did give me a very nice gap here. And again, even with the door being slightly back, I have a beautiful gap to the fender, with the fender being to the rocker. Also, my surfaces this way are lined up pretty well. These are very flush to each other. Really nice. One thing I noticed on this car when I was aligning the doors was, if you look down this side, if you look across this plane right here, how when it meets the quarter, it jogs inward that way, which has this door out a little further than what the other side's going to be. Now, if you look at the other side and you follow this plane right here, when it goes back to the quarter, which I mean this area right here, this side's freaking straight, or straighter, which brought my door in further. I have more shims on the fender on the other side, bringing this out, because the door essentially has to line up with the quarter, and you make that adjustment in the front. If you adjust the bolts in the door here, loosen them, that's where you move your in and out adjustment, which lines up your door back here. And I was just puzzled by why this door was in so far and this door was out a little further, which also required more shims here. And I just noticed how that line back there, or that quarter, just is on more of an angle going outward, which made this part out further, which meant I had to adjust the door out further to marry up to that. And as well as the door is flush to the rocker here. So it's not a case where I could loosen all the bolts, move the whole door in, because this is where it needs to be. So that was just some weirdness I saw, but overall, gaps are good. The other thing, I don't have the hood on the car, and it's one thing that I always tell anybody who's aligning panels is, don't just align a side. Always put as much together on the car as you can, because if you align something incomplete, it may work. You know, this fender and this door might be lined up good, but when you go to put the hood on, now your hood opening may be incorrect. So it's good to have the hood on. I did have the hood on this car earlier and did get proper gaps. I also had all my shims marked and that sort of thing, which kind of worked out the way I took it apart. It went back together about the same way, a little bit different, but close. But another thing you can do is if you just want to check yourself without going through the motion of putting the hinges on and putting the hood on and going through all that, just take measurements. And remember, when you're measuring, okay, you want to measure in a straight plane, meaning you don't want to have your tape measure going across an arc, which the hood has a slight arc to it from one side to the other. So if you lay a tape measure over the top of that, you're now measuring over the top of an angle. So you want to measure straight across on the front and the back, get some measurements, and then what I did with the hood was, being that it's laying against the wall, I just measured on the floor from one side to the other to make sure that where my fenders are aligned, the hood's going to fit. And I ended up with a 1/2 inch larger opening than the hood measures, so it'll give me that 1/4 inch gap on both sides, which will work out perfectly in the end. This side, as far as the gaps go, this side gave me a little bit of a problem, or problems. Back here, I'm a little tighter on my gap. I do have the door, again, slightly back from the rocker right here. The front fender gap is nice, it's very nice. But to get this door to move front, I would end up having to round out the holes of the door hinge to get it to adjust forward any more than what it is now. But this door and the other door is, according to the door to the rocker, is exactly the same. So that tells me the door's in the right place. Now the quarters were both replaced earlier on before I received the project. There is, I think, a little difference up here from side to side, and I think this quarter might be just the reason why this gap is a little tighter, but it's hard to measure to figure out, you know, if a panel one side to the other is in the exact same spot. But I mean, overall, yeah, the gap's a little tighter, but it's still manageable, it's still okay. And I think in the end, once I start blocking my panels and getting my body line straight, I'm gonna pull this, I will be pulling all this stuff apart again, and I'm gonna just hog out the holes in the hinges just a little bit, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, just to get it front just a little bit more and get this gap a little bigger, because the things you got to remember is when you align panels, remember, okay, I could say, yeah, the door and the quarter, you know, the door opens and closes and so on, but you're going to have a quarter window and a door window. And a lot of times there's a divider strip or weather strip piece that goes between those two pieces of glass, and or even the window in relationship to here and the window in relationship to here. If you have the door too far front or too far back, well, now you're going to fight with getting your seal correct on the A pillar you're going to struggle with getting your two pieces of glass to marry up to each other, and then essentially you could have the same problem back here. So door alignment is critical, is crucial, and you know, on these GM cars, door gaps are usually, I'm going to say, anywhere between 3/16 to 5/16 of an inch, somewhere in between there, and this is way tighter. So what could happen here is, if this and this are too close together, that could lead to more problems in the end. So if I can get this married to this a little bit better, that will help the person, whoever that may be, putting the windows in and getting the correct window alignment. So there's a lot of things involved with every step. There's things involved with the specific of the step, but then there's things that if you do this step wrong, it could affect the next guy. It's like building a crooked foundation when you're building a house. The foundation's crooked, well, then pretty much everything else happening afterwards is going to follow suit, and somebody's going to have to work harder to fix the first person's mistake. So what we have here is good panel alignment. You know, tops are nice and flush, body lines are nice and flush, the body line down across the fender into the quarter, they're matched up beautifully. Surfaces this way are very nice. So now where I'll continue with this project is, I like to keep the car together, and I'll finish. I have all the plastic work to finish on the quarters, which is what I'm going to start doing. And then once the quarters are ready for primer, or I'll prime the quarters, I should say, and then I'll come back and I'll block the entire middle body line, because that is usually the most important one, and I like to have that blocked to the point where that's going to be the way I'm going to paint it. Because if you take the panels off and block these on a stand or separately, you could possibly sand them too little or too much and end up with a little differences in the line, that when you paint it and then put the car back together, the line doesn't match up anymore. So I like to do that part when it's all together, just to guarantee that if I get this right, this will end up being right, the bottom one will be right, but these can be variables, because these lines to begin with weren't and are never super crisp. I try and get them very sharp, very distinct. So that's where I like to start with, keeping that crisp and sharpness of it. But you have to do it, in my opinion, do it when it's all together, just to guarantee that, you know, you can use that as a guideline to get the panels back together and back exactly where they belong. If that line's perfect, then the rest of them should fall together. But we got a little bit of plastic work here to finish. Got to start these bottoms. So on to more plastic work, and that's where we're gonna wrap things up. Just give you an idea of the progress on this project, so y'all can learn what it takes and what is required of these types of jobs. This isn't a scuff and shoot, Mako $500 cliche. This is what a restoration type job is like. And it's also, this also shows, and it'll help you understand, whoops, it'll help you understand why, you know, these jobs cost what they cost. There's a lot of man hours involved here, a lot of steps, but in the end, I want any of these projects to go and be able to be admired and take home trophies. So, okay, that's where we are. Stay tuned for more on DTR's YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell, subscribe, leave a comment, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.